You're good to go.
All right. Greetings, all. Welcome to the first, and maybe only, maybe not, the first Shout Virtual Harrisburg event. Thank you all for coming. My name is Mitch Howard. I'll be your MC for this event. I'd like to thank you all for coming out on a Thursday at 7 p.m. to share this time with us. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and have our facilitators go ahead and introduce themselves. So Zach, we can start with you. Just say hello to everybody.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. My name is Zach Betts, and I am a junior at South Fayette.
Hi, I'll go next. My name is Anastasia Gupta. I am a freshman at South Fayette.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Alexander Haney, and I'm a senior at South Fayette.
Hello, everyone. My name is Yadisha Chahanda, and I'm also a freshman from South Fayette High School.
Hi, I'm Rashika, and I am a sophomore at South Fayette.
Hi, I'm Emma, and I'm a freshman at South Fayette.
All right. So before we get right on into it, I am going to ask everybody to please mute themselves if you are not a facilitator or panelist. So we'll try and keep as much of that background noise absent as possible. So once we've got confirmation looking through here, and perfect. All right, we'll get started. So the virtual Harrisburg discussion is going to contain 5 main discussion topics, the first of which will be led by Zach. And so if I could have all of my panelists please say a quick hello, just introduce yourselves. That way we know who we're asking these questions to.
Each of us. That's really awkward. Oh my God.
Hi, Mitch. My name is Luz. I'm the executive director to the Governor's Advisory Commission on Latino Affairs. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for this invitation. And I'm thrilled to engage in conversation with tonight's panel discussion.
Hello, everyone. I'll go. My name is Marlon Ferguson, and I am the Southwest Regional Director for Senator Bob Casey. I also have my colleague on the call, Robbie Matistik, and she's also from our office. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mariah Hathaway. I also work in the governor's office. I am the executive director of the Pennsylvania Commission for Women. And Luce is actually one of my colleagues, and we had the pleasure of meeting with Mitch, I believe, last week. So, we're excited to be here, and it's nice to see all of your faces.
Let's see, Senator Williams, are you hearing us?
Apologies. Yes. Hi, I'm State Senator Lindsey Williams. I represent the 38th Senatorial District in Allegheny County. Apologies for not having my camera. There we go. So thank you all for being here. I look forward to a great discussion.
All right. Thank you all so much for coming out. We're going to ask that we keep these responses to the questions kind of short. We are on a deadline. We do know how long-winded we can all be. I think I can be the first to admit that. So we'll get right on into the first discussion. Zach, the floor is yours, my brother.
All right. Thank you very much, Mitch. So as we mentioned before, we are Shout, and we're really excited to talk to you all tonight. We have several different types of questions that we would like to ask you all tonight. The first topic that we're going to be discussing tonight is about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So in Shout, we put a lot of focus on many things, and one of those things are diversity, equity, and inclusion for all people. What comes to your mind personally when you hear the words diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Wait, I'm sorry. Okay, I guess I can start. So the question is, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion look like? And I think for me, it does look like a lot of things, but when you look at the overall picture, at least when you looking at the state of Pennsylvania as a whole, diversity looks like I guess, many cultures together. When you're open to diversity in the realms of education, workforce, and in government. For me, that's what equity and inclusion looks like, right? When you look at these different realms of education, you want to be able to be at a place where it's welcoming, that if there is a sort of diversity sort of task force or some kind of like office that you can go to, so that if someone is seeking information about being sort of like learning about other cultures, that's a place to go to. That to me looks like diversity. And I think when you look at workforce, you also want to be able to be in a workplace where there is equal opportunity for all, and there is a place where there is a diverse slate of talent, I think. So I know me and Mariah, we had this discussion. It was either yesterday, and it can mean so many things, but overall, and is what I'm really trying to say here, is that diversity and inclusion. Oops. It to me, it's welcoming. That's what diversity means. Welcoming and being open-minded, and if you don't understand other cultures, to be able to have a place where you can go and ask those questions. So, that's what we're here to establish, those resources. It's really important for us to learn and to be open, and to welcome others with open arms. So, Mariah, do you want to add to that? Sorry, I'm taking a lot here.
Well, I don't want to take away too much time from other panelists that might want to talk about it. But I do want to say that as a queer woman, for me, I don't think you can have diversity, equity, and inclusion without understanding what it means to be an ally. And allyship can, it's not just the LGBT community, it's all communities, it's all cultures. And I think if you truly want to commit to diversity, equity, and inclusion, you have to commit to being self-aware and knowing what your biases are as your own person, and making sure that your groups that you're hanging out with are diverse groups, so that you can appreciate other cultures and live beyond just what you grew up with.
This may be a little different tactic than you were thinking, but when I heard diversity, equity, inclusion, and what comes to mind right now for me in the state Senate, I hear that they sound like buzzwords to me, and I hear them talked about, and I hear them said out of the mouth of elected officials who really don't understand what that means, and the work that it takes to actually not just pay lip service to, oh, we want to be inclusive, we want to have equity in our school system, but what does that actually mean, and when are you actually going to do to make yourself uncomfortable to get to a point where we are equitable? And so for me, that when I hear those, I kind of almost like, oh, what are you going to say next? That's sort of where I'm at right now in the state Senate.
If I may, Senator, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Over the past 2 years, I've attended multiple trainings on diversity, equity, inclusion, And for me, it's just very simple. It's access, having equal access, equal opportunity, and also having an understanding. Someone once said to me, it's like being invited to the dance, where you feel comfortable at the dance, but also it's an opportunity to change the music that is at the dance. You know, a lot of times, yeah, you may be invited to the dance, but you don't feel like you belong at the dance. So for me, it's having that equal access to education, job opportunities, social opportunities, and having that equal access. But I agree with you, Senator. There's a lot of these buzzwords they go around, and they really don't have much teeth to them. You know, I think people pass them around just to say just to say them, but really.
Yeah, they check the box.
Yeah, it's a box. Yes.
And I think that this is why we have to hold our, leaders in the community accountable to be able to establish, safe spaces for folks to go to when it pertains to these different avenues of culture. And if you don't understand a culture, where can you go? What can you do? So I think resources is one of them. And this is probably where I was leading to, like having sort of that service hat as I wear, being an executive director to these commissions, because, we see it all the time with our culture, and we come across this different barriers in our communities when there isn't enough resources when it relates to perhaps someone is feeling a little, treated in a way that it's not either fair to them. So I think that in most cases, when we do hear these situations at hand where, and I'll give an example in terms of like the school districts. And oftentimes when there is a situation in the school where there's students that is feeling these tensions, what can we do to be able to like implement some changes? And I think that the commissions do a really good job at partnering with the Department of Education and looking at programs like Shout, like the Spirit program, which I've worked with in the past, to be able to work with the students. And in reality, oftentimes it's much more of a educational component than anything else, because sometimes folks don't really understand another culture, whereas perhaps resources in which we know of, we can go into the schools and discuss what is how can we help, and oftentimes it does help, and I've seen changes, and I think that we're living in a time where it is changing. Pennsylvania is changing, and we see that, and we're going to see that more so with the census. So no, I think that no answer is the wrong answer here. But I feel like this is such a good topic for others to know that there is help. When I look at diversity and inclusion, I look at a resource standpoint than anything else. So yeah.
That's very interesting. Thank you all so much for sharing that. So one more question that we're going to ask for now with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And just as a reminder, we are on a bit of a schedule, so we would recommend keeping this next answer short, but not too short, of course. We want to hear what you all have to say, because your answers to the last question were absolutely incredible. And we were wanting to ask, so have there ever been any diversity, equity, and inclusion bills that you or anyone that you know or work with supported or really tried to back up that you know of?
Just like coming from an LGBT perspective, I do know that the governor's office and the LGBT commission and representatives like Brian Sims and Malcolm Kenyatta, and I know we have an ally in Senator Lindsey Williams when I say that we've been trying to pass non-discrimination for LGBTQ individuals for a long time. And that's a bill that's out there. It was brought up recently, shot down again, but it's definitely something that the community needs. Because, I know I have an ally in Governor Wolf and that I won't lose my job because of my sexuality, but, when his term's up and I go to apply for other jobs, I have no protections. So that's just something that, the governor has really been working on. And that's part of the reason he established the LGBT Commission in the first place.
Yes, I am co-sponsor on a number of diversity and equity inclusion bills, anti-discrimination bills that unfortunately, because I am in the minority party, have not moved in a very long time, but I am either a co-sponsor or co-prime on a number of them. I'm working on one for this session to work on, since I am the minority chair of education, I'd like to work on some curriculum-based, culturally responsive curriculum that is integrated within the curriculum all the way through. So you're not just getting, a couple classes during Black History Month. Like that's not effective. But also working with educators to develop that curriculum that integrates throughout, because we don't want to do things in a way that are harmful. If educators who don't have lived experiences or haven't had the training possibly can do more harm than good. So we're working on a bill that would create like a task force to develop this. So normally I'm not a big fan of task force because I feel like they put off the work. And but in this instance, I do think it's actually important to do this right. And so I know I'll be reaching out to a lot of you as I work on that legislation this session.
I don't know if anybody was waiting for me to say anything, but I know that like Mariah said, her and I did discuss, and we, am I on mute? I'm not on mute. Okay. Basically, it's just really, it really goes the same. We work obviously for the same office, so any of these diversity, equity, and inclusion legislation, we're definitely just going to continue to support. The only thing I will add to that is not only that we look at it in a sort of like diversity and inclusion standpoint, but an equity, equal opportunity is really what I'm trying to say in terms of like women's pay grade, where oftentimes women come into a job and it's not equal pay to the same job perhaps a man is doing. So that was a piece of legislation that was supported a while back, which I was actually, there's a executive order, if I'm not mistaken, where it goes down the slate. Doesn't matter if it's a woman doing the same job as a man, but it should be equal because it's the same job. So it goes the same. Women often, I mean, we can feel discriminated at times when in a workplace when perhaps it's not being treated equally. So not only do we see this in culture, but we do see it in other ways. So I would say that. But that's about it. But other than that, there is those pieces of legislation should be supported. I mean, literally straight through with no interceptions in between. So, yep.
Well, you've all brought up some amazing points regarding DEI and kind of how your position has been able to kind of influence the discussion and kind of the measures taken to really implement this concept of DEI in your workspaces and your lives. And so we're going to move right on into kind of the segment regarding the government policy that's been implemented regarding DEI. And so to handle that segment, I will pass it over to Alex.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm going to start out by asking this. How does DEI compare to other issues in bipartisan legislature? Is it more or less important, more or less popular, easier or harder to get through?
It's hard to get through. I mean, being in the minority party, we do not control the calendar, we do not control the agenda, we do not control what bills are brought up within committee. It's not like in other states, they have rules about that every bill gets a vote or every bill gets a committee hearing or a certain percentage of minority bills. There are built-in protections for when you are in the minority to make it fair. We don't have that in Pennsylvania in either the House or the Senate. The power is concentrated in a few people within the majority party that control what we even discuss. So I actually have a bunch of memos that are going to drop tomorrow morning. So you guys get to be the first to know. I'm working on with Senator Katie Muth on the other side of the state that are a whole host of rule changes that make it so that there is more participation, more debate, and that more of these bills can be brought up and the public can engage in them in a way that hopefully, once these bills tend to get to the floor, they do get voted on and they do get approved. It's that people don't ever want them to even come up on the calendar. So one of the things that we want to do, it sounds like a little wonky, but you actually have to change the rules of the body to get the type of legislation that you're looking at to see the light of day.
Wonderful, thank you. And I know the rest of the panelists aren't directly involved in making legislature inside of the Capitol building in Harrisburg. So how is it for you guys, and how hard or easy is it for you guys to help promote DEI in terms of the people that you're serving and you're tasked to educate?
Well, I guess quickly, I'll just be very short. I know for us, when there is a specific DEI legislation that we feel needs to be supported, oftentimes what we do have the ability to do is discuss this with our broader audience, which will be our constituents, our community leaders, and folks that really we know that perhaps can sort of shuffle things around, to say the least. And I think that when there is a piece of legislation that the community believe in, it's really important for our leaders in the community, our other local legislators to really support that moving forward. And as for me and in my purview, see, we have commissions, large commissions that that folks that represent each different areas of the state. In my commission, I have 33 commissioners. So if there is a piece of legislation that we would like to share with the commissioners, it's always more so that word of mouth, that conversation that goes hand in hand when there is a legislation that we would like to support on a broader level. So, and what I'm all trying to say is that the community is a large, they have voices. They, you know what I mean? They ultimately, they're the ones that really do fight for change. And we know because, we've seen it time and again. And this is why I feel that our legislators do need that support system when it comes down to our communities when looking at these kinds of legislations. So.
If I may speak anecdotally, I just finished a program at Carnegie Mellon, and one of the things we talked about was that businesses now are feeling the impact of their lack of diversity and inclusion. In the past, it was something that wasn't very quantifiable. because really nobody was looking for it. The folks that were being impacted by the lack of these policies really weren't on the radar, right? So now businesses are seeing that if they're losing money, right? Return on investment it's all about the mighty dollar. So now they're seeing that having a diverse workforce is in their best interest. And now, in order for us as a society to evolve, we can no longer ignore these issues anymore, right? So there's a number of universities across the country that have done empirical studies that have shown businesses like, look, this is affecting your bottom line, right? If you don't get on board, you're going to be a dinosaur. You're going to be left behind. So now I think what is happening is a lot of this movement is happening from the corporations because they're seeing, like Pittsburgh, for instance. Pittsburgh needs a diverse workforce. I was on the Allegheny Conference's call today. They realized that you have to have a diverse workforce because we want to attract and retain you young folks, right? So you guys are a generation where, I grew up in the 80s. My world was a lot different from your world. Now you guys are requiring much more. D&I is part of your DNA. So the business world needs to get on board. So now there's money behind this because it's starting to affect these businesses, right? And it's starting to affect the businesses, it's starting to affect the communities. And we're seeing the after effects of some of the civil unrest. People now are witnessing it. Before, you would hear about civil unrest and you would hear about it anecdotally. Now everybody has cell phones, right? So you can stream across the world a George Floyd, people are seeing it now, and the impact is like right in business leaders' face, political leaders' faces, and they have to react. So this is a critical time in our history. So I think also I served in the military. When I was in the military, there was a ton of racist policies, like transgender you could not serve in the military. Women were not on warships at the time when I was in. I was in the Navy. There was a policy, don't ask, don't tell, which it was just really arcane. And I'm seeing now, do you see President Biden just signed an executive order for transgender allowed to serve in the military again. I think that's wonderful. To me, any citizen of this country that want to serve in our military, they should have the opportunity, bar none, right? So I think what's happening, it's a critical time in our history, and I applaud these conversations because it's so needed, and we've all dealt with it in some way, shape, or form. I'm a Black male. I've dealt with racism. Women, you've dealt with gender discrimination, LGBT issues. We've all dealt with it at some point in time, and I think the critical mass now is saying enough is enough. It's time to really address these issues and substantively, not just talk. So, but I applaud these conversations because we got to keep talking about it, and we got to keep it in the forefront of our legislators' minds.
It came up during we had a higher ed funding commission meeting about a year ago, and the chancellor of the state system talked about how there's literally statistically not enough wealthy white men to fill the jobs that we need. So we need to figure out how in our higher education system do we make it so that minorities and those that come from economically disadvantaged backgrounds are successful. How do we set them up for success in the workforce? And it starts with our education system.
And if I may, this is a subject near and dear in my heart. There's been a history in our country of institutionalized racism. There have been laws created to marginalize folks, to keep them economically disadvantaged. It's in our history. There's a book right now that I just finished reading. You have to read it. It's called The Color of Law. And basically, it talks about how in times of prosperity, like after World War II, racist policy marginalized people of color and also times women. So it's part of our history, but it's also it's an opportunity for us to be better and to change these things. So again, keep having these conversations, folks. And young people, you give me hope. So I lean into you guys. You give me hope for a better world. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. Those responses were excellent. Now on to the next question. What is your mindset when, Senator Williams, you're proposing a bill that leans more towards the opposite side of the aisle? And what is your mindset when you are proposing a bill that leans more towards your side of the aisle? And for the rest of the panelists, what is your mindset when you are trying to promote something in, say, a place or institution or somewhere where you feel like your ideas are in the minority, and on the contrary, when your ideas are in the majority?
I'm not sure if my mindset is different. I think where I come from on why I want something to happen stays the same, but maybe what piece of it I talk to the person about and what part I might elevate or explain. Like there are some people where I don't need to make the explanation of why this is important, and maybe somebody on the opposite side of the aisle I need to appeal to a financial. Like if I'm talking about making like higher education funding, if I'm talking about that, and I may just get some people on board right away, they get it. And then other people, you need to talk about that financial reason of why financially our Commonwealth cannot afford to not look at diversity and inclusion in our higher education system. Our businesses can't afford it. And so it's talking about the financial impact, which is not where my like heart is, but that's what moves them. And so it's trying to figure out and meet people where they are and get them along with you. And then hopefully you get them on and you get their heart too next. I guess that's the way I would talk about it.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Yes. What is your mindset when you are, say, going into something, for example, like giving a presentation or a speech to a group of people that may not completely align with your ideology? And on the contrary, what is your mindset going into speaking or presenting to a group of people that have the same ideology as you? So, for example, like, would you use different tactics, different ways of speaking, carrying across different points?
I think we could approach that different ways, but as soon as you were like explaining it, for me, I think we're always going to come across individuals to agree to disagree. That I think that's just number one, and I think that, I think the senator kind of hit it where it's almost like there's always going to be someone on the other side of the aisle to kind of see things in a different perspective. But for me, particularly when you say that, I'm much more of a data driven. So if I really want to sway someone to really look at different points of views, I think that it's so important during someone's speech is to have some kind of presentation to really back up what you are talking about. So say, for instance, I'm in the room where, perhaps they are not really looking at my point of view. What is it that I'm going to do as a leader to really present the information in a way that they would understand it, and that I'm able to sway them in a way to say, oh, okay, well, that's a good point. That's a good way to see that. So I think it's all about strategy. It's also about educating yourself on the information that you would like to present, so that you could be able to convince others to see your way of thinking. And if that helps, I mean, and the only reason I say that is because I have been in those awkward situations, I want to say, where you're in a group of people and they're like looking at you like, okay, so why are we talking about this? And say, for instance, why do we really need to support this initiative, right? So it's really my job to be the convincer, to be that person to share that information, to showcase that perhaps there is an issue for them to look at at a different point of view, or in the viewpoint that I'm presenting at the moment. So yeah, but I think back and I look and I'm like, wow, those opportunities have come across. And but thankfully enough, you know, here's my other thing, and this is probably one of the ways that I do think about it. I think that if there is folks that always going to just agree with you, that's a problem. Then there is something wrong, and you're like, wait a minute, but we should have some debate about this. There should be, perhaps I could learn a few things, right? So you know, that sort of synergy with one another, I think, is really important, and I think it's part of growth. So but that's just my opinion, and I think that again, strategy is key, and really educating yourself with the information to present so that you can be able to convince others to, you know, see your point of view.
Am I muted? Well, you know, I think to answer that question, you know, if you have someone that agrees with you, that's low hanging fruit. You know, that's the easy lift. You know, you go in there, they agree with you. That's great. For me, I love the challenge of having diverse thoughts, right? I love going into a conversation with someone that disagrees with me to hopefully try to come to some common ground. I had a debate teacher who used to always say that you do not fully know your argument until you know that of your opponents, right? So for me, it's I learn more about myself when I have those debates with someone who's opposing me. But also, I kind of err on the side of, I hope to God that we all want the same things as human beings, right? You know, we all want to get up every day and live our best life, take care of ourselves. And what I do, I try to focus on that core, because sometimes you'll get a lot of subterfuge around issues that really aren't the issues. I think for me, it's getting to what is that core issue as a human being and coming up with some type of commonality that, you know, again, don't we all want the same things, right? We want to get up, take care of ourselves, our families. We want to live our best life. Why should I not have the same opportunity to do that as you do? And then, you know, I ask people that. And then I think when you get down to it, it's undeniable. They cannot not respond to that question. So for me, you know, we're all, I always laugh. I say, I want to be here the day we look up in the sky and aliens are circling our Earth. Because as human beings, we'll realize that if we don't come together as a race, we will potentially be obliterated. So instead of using our differences to divide us, I mean, use our differences to unite us. I love different thoughts, foods. I love food, you know. My neighborhood, I had friends from all ethnic groups, and having the opportunity to go around and taste different foods, different cultures. Being in the military was the same way. I managed hundreds of people in the military, but the brilliance about that was, you know, I managed people from all around the country with different backgrounds, different ideologies, different ways of looking at the world. And it made me a better leader because it helped me develop myself, my leadership style to get my message across. So I think, you know, for me, just when they say diversity is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. changing the narrative that, yeah, just because you're different from me means you're a threat to me. No, you could be an asset to me. So I think just having these conversations and these narratives to let people know we're human, right? We all want the same thing. We're all different. I wouldn't want anybody around like me. I love diversity, and just focusing on that instead of these little petty, to me, superficial differences.
Wonderful. Thank you all. On to the next question. What is the most effective method you guys have found in terms of gauging the needs or wants of your constituents or those who you require feedback from?
Okay. I just want to speak very quickly about this one.
Yes, sir.
Shutting your mouth and listening. For me, going into a conversation, not with preconceived notions, just going in and shedding your mouth and listening.
I couldn't agree more. And I would also add, meeting people where they are. Don't expect them to come to you. You go to their community group, you go to their event, and you sit and you listen there. You don't expect them to come to you with that.
I think Luce and I have, since we're not elected officials, we just are representatives of the governor, and his commissions that we have, they're made up of his constituency, and everyone on our commissions are the governor's constituents. So we try our best. I work with 34 women from across the Commonwealth, and they're all part of nonprofit groups, their own organizations. We call them stakeholders. In our office. And, it's my job as the executive director to make sure that we're connecting with groups that might not have their voice heard otherwise. And making sure that, bringing more people to the table and new people to the table. I know that for me, one of my goals as the executive director of the Women's Commission is to hopefully appoint a trans woman of color to our commission, because we know that they're facing a lot of discrimination. They're being, murdered at high rates. So I think having a new perspective, a fresh perspective on the Women's Commission, and that's a different constituency group that we aren't engaging with enough. Obviously, if they're still being murdered and things like that. So I think it's just being able to go, like what the senator was saying, meet people where they are. Notice those groups that are missing, notice the diversity that's missing, and look for it, and go out and find it, and just interact with them and see what they have to say.
And I just want to add to that quickly, because Mr. Ferguson couldn't have said it any better. It's just really listening. And I know that in literally in my career, my whole career, so it's been about a little over 25 years working with local and now state government in total for me. So I've had the wonderful opportunity to really engage with constituency, like literally focusing on just servicing, period. And you're right, oftentimes, you just need to hear what those concerns are. And that's so key when you're doing servicing, because sometimes there's constituents that come up with the most perhaps difficult circumstances, and you want to help at every level. And it's actually our job to help organize these issues so that we can be able to have some successes at the end. I mean, we all know that we can't just like with the wand, fix every issue that perhaps comes into the situation. But I always say there's a solution to every problem. And if I don't know the answer, we can help find it together. So overall, it is the service hat that we all wear as leaders in our communities. And when you look at this in a broader spectrum, the governor says it all the time. Customer service is so key. As a matter of fact, we do get in our executive team calls, and that's one of his top priorities, is really servicing the community. So it really is an honor to work for somebody that for him totally is just his number one key thing, the service that we provide with the constituency across the Commonwealth. Yep.
All right. Again, response is much appreciated. I have one more quick question before we move on to the next topic. This one's kind of a silly question, but I was curious about the federal senator's pay one day, and I was reading through the entire document that's posted on the internet, and I found a section about furniture regulations. I thought that was very interesting that only certain types of furniture were allowed inside the Capitol building in DC. So I just wanted to know if there was anything like that in the Pennsylvania Chamber of Government, and if they're very strict or not, or how that affects you wanting to decorate your respective offices as you wish.
Not that I'm aware of. Nobody has told me, but I guess I need to maybe push the rules a little bit and figure out something fun to do, because I actually don't know the answer to that question.
Well,
Maria,
I mean,
do you know anything about that?
I was going to bring up the fact that not a furniture regulation, but a funny regulation, I think, is that the lieutenant governor had to remove flags from his balcony. I wasn't really sure as why he had to do that. He's just a proud ally of LGBT community, and he, a staunch advocate for, legalizing recreational marijuana, and using that money to go toward restorative justice programs. So that's like the first thing I think of, because I saw an article today where it's like, Lieutenant Governor is going to put his flags back up, and they were just removed. And it's like, why can't, it's his office. Why can't he hang whatever flags he wants?
Yeah, we literally changed the law to prevent him, because there wasn't a prohibition. And after he hung the pride flag and the marijuana flag, the majorities passed a law that said that no other flags could be flown on the Capitol grounds, and they take them down.
Yeah, I think that could count as one of the silly ones.
You are right. Good catch. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, now that's all from me. I'm going to pass it back on to Mitch.
All right, thank you. Well, it's certainly been interesting kind of discussing all of these weird intricacies that exist within your respective roles. And so one thing we really wanted to talk about, especially since Alex mentioned the salaries, we wanted to kind of talk about kind of the economic implications of your roles in government. And so to break that all down for us, I welcome future public relations co-director Vidisha.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vidisha. So let's get started. So when this pandemic has clearly affected millions of people's lives, and especially in the economy, and millions of Americans have lost their jobs. So how has that affected our elected officials' office?
I tell you, it makes it very hard to sleep at night. So I get couple hundred calls a week into my office, probably more than that in emails. The vast majority of them, I'd say, 80% of them are unemployment compensation requests, that they haven't had unemployment, that they can't get it, that they are in danger of losing their house, or they need help with their rent. The other part right now, the other big in my inbox is how they can get access to a vaccine. Those are kind of the two top at the moment. But there are so many people suffering right now, and we don't have good answers for them. And putting them in line to get help when it's been months that they haven't had a paycheck, you're just sort of directing them to a food bank or something. People are angry. People are desperate, and especially my staff. They spend a lot of time on the phone every day, just listening to people. and that's all. Sometimes it's all we can do, and that is really heartbreaking. That weighs on me as an elected official, that I can't do more, and it kind of fuels me when I'm feeling tired and I'm going to Harrisburg. It's those are the people calling my office that's the reason I am there, is to fight for them.
Well, Senator, I'd like to say I want to dovetail on what you're saying. Same thing. I grew up very humble beginnings. I know how it is when you don't know where your next paycheck is coming, and it's just heart wrenching that people are really out there. They're struggling. And being a staffer for the senator, I know the senator is so passionate about people and helping people. So, Robbie and I, we do, painstakingly daily, we get calls about, COVID, unemployment. People are afraid. Mental health right now is very critical. A lot of folks are, folks your age, suicide rate is extremely high right now. It's just a bad time. And for me, it really is heart wrenching, to see, because for me, it triggers, I have those old feelings of just, not being able to make it. So, and I know how it is when people are in that space. But for me, I'm disappointed, but I'm also comforted. I'm disappointed in the lack of, from the federal government, some of the responses we've had in terms of, the CARES Act and the COVID response, the months of denying the virus and not wearing a mask and, debating this. For me, it's just foolish. But I'm really hopeful now that with the new administration, we have people that understand the severity of what we're going through. And also we have people that care. There's people in that office like the senator that and myself and Robbie, we care. We're in our communities. We care what happens to people. And we have now we have people in the executive branch that feel those same things. So for me, I'm comforted the fact that we have a new administration that cares about what happens to the people we serve, and that they're also going to have an effective plan to manage this. But it is heart-wrenching. And for me, anybody in public service, it's not a sexy job. You're not going to get rich. I'm a staffer. People think that, I work for the Senate, we work for the Senate. No, actually, I took a pay cut to do this job. But every day I'm so happy that I'm here because, one, I have the opportunity to talk with young people such as yourself. Also opportunity to help people in our communities. I'm a Pittsburgher and I want to help people. So that's the way I feel. Robbie?
I guess, I can add a little to that. Looking at it a different lens, in terms of what it looks like in sort of like the whole Commonwealth. But I do come from Philadelphia, born and raised. I'm actually now in Harrisburg, but that's my stomping grounds, living in Philadelphia, sort of, coming from humble beginnings as well, where, you see those struggles. And now we're in a pandemic and we're seeing this wave of need in our communities. And partnership is so important. Accessibility and networking in this time is very critical. So important, so much so where we're looking at every nook and cranny all around the Commonwealth for resources to help one another. And since Mariah and I, we have commissions that, represent different counties of the state where we're looking at things at a broader spectrum. Whereas, say for instance, if Philadelphia is doing something and they found a way to assist and help those that are in need, we try to take those different strategies and implement them in other areas where perhaps it may work for them. I can agree more with Mr. Ferguson stating that, it's very difficult, it's heart-wrenching, but at the same time, I do, like you all in the panel, have hope for this administration to, turn things around. And it's going to take time, and they're going to need everybody's help to really come together to help. And it's about resourcing that sharing information that may help those that are in need. So those are my 2 cents about this. But you're right, especially when you're dealing with a constituency. And I can't imagine the senator and what you all are going through hearing these stories. I mean, I could only just imagine what that looks like. But we're here to help. This is why we wear these hats, and this is why we're in the positions that we are, because we're service-driven people. And we have to hear the bad news. We have to know what those situations are in order for us to really dig in deep as to how we can be able to help and assist.
All right, well, I do hope that at your offices it does get better as we keep getting vaccinations done and as the new administration does take over. So talking about President Joe Biden, he has revealed his economic plan recently, and with his economic relief plan, it was has over $1 trillion to assist families who need financial support. But however, Biden has also signed an order that revoked the permit for the construction of the Keystone XL pipeline, if you've heard of that. And this has destroyed 11,000 jobs and about $2 billion in wages. So what are your thoughts about this?
I was going to let Marlon go first because he was the federal guy, but I feel like I'm throwing him under the bus.
Senator, it's all yours.
That's a really complicated issue, especially right now with where our economy is at. And I feel like we're constantly fighting between jobs and in the environment. And we got to figure out a way where we can have both. We could have good union, well-paying jobs that protect people on the job site from whether it be discrimination based on their sexual orientation or their color, or the fact that they speak up about health and safety violations. And so I can understand the frustration right now in losing all of these jobs, but then I see the frustration of people who have these pipelines in their backyard that are destroying their communities. Because let's be honest, most times these pipelines are not going through rich white communities. That's not the land that they are disrupting and the people they are disrupting. So it's a complicated thing that when we talked earlier about the question about working together, this is something that is going to take a lot of people having some difficult conversations about jobs and the environment, and how do we keep people at work but also protect the environment. And I really do believe that we can do both.
I'd like to say something about that too. We know that Senator Casey has a very strong position about supporting the workers and supporting labor. He's been committed to them for all of his career. And I think what we have to first accept about the Keystone XL pipeline, we probably don't know all that went on behind. We don't know what all led to that decision, and we may not understand all that led to the decision to put a moratorium on the leases for extraction underneath federal lands either. So we, to the senator's point, we have an awful lot to learn about this. And I do want to say this too, I come from a coal community. And so I'm very familiar with the energy extractive industries. And we don't have good solutions right now for how to help those workers as our markets change and as we need to implement policies to protect our climate and protect the environment. So we have much to learn. And I just ask that all of you keep in mind as we get through this, and I do believe that we're going to have factual conversations thanks to this administration. I think we have much, much more to learn, and that we don't give in to a cancel, if you know what I mean. You know, there are a lot of rural communities that have been dependent upon energy extraction for a long time, and but on the other hand, we have to have safe air to breathe. So somewhere we have to bring all this together. I don't think we've done a good job of it so far. I think we speak on behalf of our boss. There's much, much more work that needs to be done there too. And let's all agree that in the realm of social justice as well as environmental justice, we work really hard to understand all of the implications of all of this. You know, in rural communities, those extractive industries are a large part of the school district's budget, the taxes that are paid on that. So if something were to catastrophic were to happen and all of those revenues were gone, how will those families' how will the children of those families, you know, how will they ever get the education that they should be entitled to? So there's so much to the whole conversation. I just ask that you all try to understand so much more of it all the time. It's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And clearly it's probably one of the most important matters of your future, if not the most important matter of your future. Thanks.
All right, thank you once again for your responses. They were very thoughtful. So I guess switching to a different perspective, Tom Wolf and Mike Bloomberg have spent millions of dollars during the governor election. And if you've noticed in the presidential election, President Joe Biden spent $383 million just in the September of 2020. And so clearly elections are expensive, preventing the common man from participating in politics. So what is your take on this?
I'll jump in on that one. Okay, so first, Citizens United, the Supreme Court case that allowed corporations to invest, needs to be fixed immediately, because that is allowed, like in the federal government, you have, at least there are some campaign finance limits, but then you have what are called independent expenditures, where people can dump a whole lot of money. There's very little transparency about who that is, how they spend the money. And in Pennsylvania, it is actually even worse. If you didn't know it, there are no campaign finance limits for running for state level office. So somebody could write me a check for $1 million and I could take it. Now, if you have somebody who has $1 million, let me know. That does not tend to be who writes me a check. But all kidding aside, my state Senate race, my campaign spent about $1.2 million to get me elected to the state Senate. And I was out, the person I ran against spent 1.6. So he spent like almost another $500,000 over what I spent. And that does not count what was spent on those independent expenditures on either side for either one of us. And there was a lot of money spent on TV. It is absolutely absurd that amount of money can be spent on races, and that much of it is not very transparent to the public about who is investing in these candidates. So, but it is fun. Like, you can at least see what is, and who gave me money, who gave other senators money. There is a website on the State Department's website that you can look it up. So you can look up your elected official and you can at least see what money was given to them directly, and also where they spent their money. Sometimes it's interesting to see where they spent their money. Are they somebody who's in leadership and who is giving money around the state to other races? You should always follow the money.
I kind of just wanted to add to the point that Senator Williams was making. We know that the amount of money it takes to run for office is one of the reasons that it keeps women from running. And we know that there are so many disparities. There's, women make up over half the population in Pennsylvania and, in the United States, it's about 50-50. But when we look in the legislatures, it's not equal whatsoever. And, recently I've been starting to read this book from Emily's List, which is like a nonprofit organization that helps get Democratic pro-choice women elected. And it's called Run to Win. And the thing that, they bring up a lot is, it costs so much money for women to run for office. It's keeping mothers from running because they have to worry about having a career while also trying to find childcare, which we know is extremely expensive, and things like that. So I wholeheartedly agree with Senator Williams that it starts with revoking Citizens United and making sure that we put a spotlight on where our candidates are getting their money from. And, the way we'd like to think that candidates are all grassroots organizers, but we know that's not the case. So yeah, I would just reiterate to follow the money and also just do your own research, which I know can be hard sometimes, but I know there's a book out there called Dark Money. And, if any of you are really interested in lobbying and interest groups, I would recommend that book to you.
Thank you, Maura, for saying that. You're 100% right. It is much harder for women to raise. It is much harder for minority candidates to raise. And I was realizing, like, before I ran for office, that I was helping other candidates run, specifically women and minority candidates. That's a passion of mine. And I was realizing that I was volunteering for them, but I wasn't contributing to them. And I went to a thing in DC that changed my perspective on campaign giving, because it wasn't something I personally thought about. And it was a study called Vote with Your Purse, where it studied women's representation in Congress. And it said that the years that women's financial giving went down were also the years that women's representation in Congress went down. There was a direct correlation. So the woman who was giving the talk made us promise to give a minimum of $5 to any woman candidate we came across that shared our values, and just give her $5, no questions asked. And it was at that point that I started becoming a political donor. And you can be a political donor at $5 because it really does matter and it really does make a difference. And those are the contributions that made up the bulk of my campaign. It was small dollar donors, and it was money from labor unions that supported me. But not only volunteering for candidates that you want to see, but but also writing them that $5 check. It makes a big difference. And also, you all should run for office. Because when I ran for office in the state Senate, there were 3 Democratic women. We elected 3 more, so we doubled in 1 year how many women were in the state Senate, and then we just added another one. Pennsylvania had been the last in the country, either last or second to last in terms of representation of women in state level politics. Right now, we have no women of color in the state Senate at all. There are 0. We only have 4 men of color in the state Senate. So you all should run. And if somebody had told me when I was in high school that I was going to be a state senator, I would have laughed. So even if you don't think that's possible now, you never know what's going to happen. So keep your options open into what you might do, because I think you'd all make great elected officials.
Senator, I want to echo the same thing. I was just about to say that you should all run. I ran for my local school board 4 years ago. The whole process of campaigning and getting out. Again, I feel everyone should have opportunity to experience that. And yeah, I mean, you guys are the future, and the only way to make changes are from the inside. So I agree with you, Senator. Get up there, and if any of you want to run, I'll give you $5 right there. I'll start your campaign.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Me too. That's 15. That's
Yeah. So let me know where to send the money.
All right, thank you. That was very much appreciated. Last question was very interesting. So my economy segment is over, so I'm going to hand it back to Mitch.
Thank you, Vidisha. It's interesting, it's just a small world. So, for those that don't know, Citizens United was a Supreme Court case that basically allowed, 527 groups and 501c4s to donate unlimited amounts of money without disclosing their donors. And so, in theory, you could really open the door and make the argument for corruption and bribery of politicians, because you have these, kind of shadowy organizations donating massive amounts of money, and they don't need to disclose their donors. And so it's like, where are you getting that money from, bud? And it's very interesting that you bring that up, something we're studying in school right now. And definitely agree with the point on, us students, you advocates are the future. So shout, friends, fellow student leaders. This future's in our hands. And that being said, we're going to segue right into our segment on education and accessibility in schools. And so let's welcome Miss Anya Gupta.
Thank you all so much for coming tonight. I appreciate it so much. It really helps to hear perspectives from the people in our state government. It helps us to be involved in our community. The first question I have for you, something that has been on my mind a lot. It's something I've discussed with my parents and educators. How can we help our students gain access to technology privileges in schools? Because it is so unfortunate how many minority schools and students have trouble accessing technology, especially during COVID, when it is essential to education. Is there any way that we can help schools like that gain that privilege? Is there anything that you can do to help schools gain that privilege?
I mean, I think that's reaching out to your elected officials, whether it be on your local level or your state rep, state senator, and say how much you support increased school funding. Or when we have, we expect, more aid dollars from the federal government, and we decide how that gets spent. The $4 billion of the CARES money that was spent in Pennsylvania that got split up between schools and small businesses. So when we see stuff like that, advocating that some of that money from the federal government should go to purchasing technology for underprivileged schools. And elected officials hear from lobbyists all the time, professional lobbyists, but actually hearing personal stories from students about how that impacts them in a real way, it does move legislators. They do. You'll hear them talk about it on the floor in their remarks. So you shouldn't ever hesitate to reach out to them and say, hey, in fact, the governor is going to be doing his budget address real soon. If you don't hear what you want to hear the governor say about the budget, you should tell the governor. And if he has a great thing in the budget proposal that you like, then you should reach out to your elected officials and say, hey, the governor proposed X amount of money to go to schools. I want you to vote for that. Those are things that you can do.
Senator, I want to echo the same sentiments. When the COVID crisis hit, it pushed everyone into their homes, and it pushed the need for virtual connectivity to a point that we'd never seen in our history. A lot of rural communities do not have broadband. There's a lot of areas that do not have broadband. So how can you educate our students when you can't even connect to the internet, right? So it revealed that there's a lot of broadband infrastructure issues that I know the Senator Casey, we're very well aware of. We're going to work with the Biden administration to address these issues. But yeah, so that basic thing that a lot of us take for granted, just being able to pop on the internet, that's not a reality for a lot of folks. So again, how do you educate your kid or educate yourself when you can't even connect to the internet, or you don't have a reliable computer, right? Or so those things right now, again, the COVID crisis is a crisis, but it also revealed opportunities for us to be better. And that's one right now with the broadband it's just awful. There's some areas that just cannot get connection. And there's money out there. Okay, so when people say there's not money, there's money. It's just folks deciding where this money needs to go, and the voices need to be heard to say, like, look, this is important to us as constituents. We need to fix these things.
Yeah, and I'll just echo those sentiments. I know Governor Wolf has been pushing for broadband access even before the COVID-19 crisis. I'm sure it's going to be a part of, his agenda and probably the budget again this summer. I'm is it spring? Is it summer? There's so many different budgets this year. But yeah, so just to reiterate, you have an advocate and an ally with Governor Wolf. That broadband is just something he's been working on. And, if you're having trouble reaching Governor Wolf, you know two of his employees now, me and Luz. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Broadbanding is important. I think that, I'm echoing what everybody is saying is oftentimes we do hear the lack of accessibility to technology. That's one of the major concerns that because within our commissions, we do have prospective different committees. Education is one of them. This is one of the issues that has been brought to our attention, where there is a huge need in the Commonwealth, and to identify exactly where we need to implement more broadbanding. So I do agree with it all. I think that groups like this, like Shout, can make such a big difference. And I really just want to say that. I just want to highlight that very quickly, because I feel like when there is unity, there's movement, and there is ways to showcase that there is a definite dire need for either broadbanding and accessibility to technologies to these schools, where groups like yours can really make a difference in that, and showcasing that there is a need for it. So just wanted to add that within this conversation.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for those answers. I will definitely make sure to reach out. My second question is both a workplace question and an education question. How can we implement more progressive and difficult courses into our curriculum, specifically history courses like LGBTQ history courses and specific world cultures courses that we don't see very often? Can we standardize this progressive learning? And if so, how can we? And if we can't offer it in our schools, is there any way we can offer it in the workplace?
Oh, I like to. You know what? Yeah, I worked at 3 universities, and education is a passion of mine. I think, after the Civil War, there was a movement to basically whitewash America. There was a movement to, like for instance, the Confederate statues. There was a group that they had money, resources to basically remarket this war. So that's why you have military bases named after Confederate generals. You have statues all over our country of Confederate generals. You have a lot of the curriculum that I learned and that probably your parents learned that was favorable to these folks, right? So for me, it's all about education. To make changes, get on school boards, join school boards, affect the curriculum, right? That's where the power is. Make sure when you have your children that you attend school board meetings and you're active in your schools, and make sure you're understanding the curriculum your kids are learning. It was amazing to me when I used to sit on the school board, how many people did not know what their kids were learning. And it was just kind of an afterthought. You have to be involved. You have to be engaged. And there was a coordinated effort with money to change the narrative, racist rhetoric to change the narrative. And we have to, like myself, I was thinking growing up, there wasn't, like, Black History Month was not, I grew up in the 70s. We didn't have such thing, and then most of the education that I learned about Black people was very little, few and far between. I started taking classes in Black culture in college, and I learned more about my culture in college than I did growing up. And how, for me as a society, how do you feel part of the society when you don't even exist in that society? You know what I mean? You're not in the history. And then when you are in the marketing, is never favorable. It's always, blackmail, robbing or on drugs or this, that, and the other. You rarely see blackmail who's a teacher or a doctor or when I was growing up, the Cosby Show was like this groundbreaking show because they were both, he was a doctor, she was an attorney. We never saw that on TV, so it's a deliberate effort to have all of us as Americans, as human beings, represented in our society, because there was a deliberate effort to exclude a lot of folks, and it was deliberate and it had money behind it. So I think the effort also has to be deliberate and it has to have some financial resources behind it to change that.
And I just want to add that within the different commissions that we have, at least when looking at the different in the workplace. So each commission represents, we have the Asia Pacific Islanders, the African American Commission, the Women's Commission, LGBTQ, and the one I lead, which is the Latino Affairs Commission. So what we do collectively and what we have been able to accomplish in the past is the different Heritage Months that we celebrate. And we've had the honor to showcase the different cultures within our respective commissions to just share the history behind the culture and the contributions that Latinos make within the Commonwealth. And that's really important to showcase. And if that is not implemented in showing the different heritage in the school district. Perhaps, again, this could be a group where to make those differences, right? To perhaps create a place where you can celebrate these different diverse groups where it'll be some component of learning different cultures. And I think that's really important because we're all in this together. We're here, and I feel that those moments and those different events showcase so much, and people learn from them. So it's again, it's really really nice to see the different cultures do these events. So, I mean, Mariah, you want to add, because I know even Women's History Month is big, because I even when I had the honor of going to several of women's events, and they're just amazing. You want to speak on that, Mariah?
Well, I will say yes. So if you don't know, Women's History Month is actually in March, so it is coming up. And the Commission for Women actually honors female veterans from the Commonwealth, and we'll be doing a virtual celebration for them this year. Former Senator Pam Iovino is actually a female veteran. She's been honored before, and she's on the Women's Commission. So I guess there's that. But I did want to speak about from the perspective of a queer individual, and knowing that I don't think that we're going to get LGBTQ electives into school curriculums if we can't even get non-discrimination to go through, which is sad. And I would love to see that, because for me, it would have made a world of difference if, in high school, I learned who Harvey Milk was. And I learned that, that you can thrive as a queer person. You can be in government as a queer person. I grew up actually in Greene County, which is right below all of you. And from that coal town, and, I didn't have any queer people to look up to. I didn't have any queer education. So I didn't discover who I was until I went off to college and, I found my community there. So I do see the value of wanting that curriculum and wanting the LGBTQ electives and like Black History electives. I think that those would be very important, and I would love to push legislation if it were created at this point to get that to go through. But I don't know if Pennsylvania's there yet, but hopefully one day we can be.
Yeah, I hope it's sooner rather than later, because you're right. It's very hard to get something passed statewide, but you can start with your school district. You can start with circulating a petition to all your fellow students and asking the school board to make a change. And if you don't have a representative on your school board, I know some districts do, some districts don't, but some of them have a student representative that sits on the school board, that is a constant voice there, like pushing to have that, so that it's not just curriculum, but that you have a student voice in your school all the time. I think that's very important.
Yes, Senator, I agree. We had 2 student reps on our school board, and it did make an impact. It really did. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. You got to get involved, and also you can't expect someone else to do the heavy lifting. A lot of times, if you want change, if you're not going to do it, it won't happen. And one thing too, you have to understand there's a group of folks out there that they want to push their agenda, and they have resources, right? There's resources and they have an agenda. And in order for us, folks to be seen, we also have to, have that effort and agenda and push, have resources. So $5, I agree with the senator, you got to put our money where our passions are. So, but I agree, just, you got to be involved, because if you wait for somebody else to do it, it's not going to happen. and
Thank you.
vote.
Sorry, no, please continue. Thank you all so much. That was wonderful. My next question is, what should define a graduation requirement? I know that a lot of schools have different graduation requirements in regards to language and some other certain required courses. So what would you say would be your ideal graduation requirement?
Very quickly. I think the purpose of school is to prepare you for the world, right? So for me, those graduation requirements should be based on what you want to do with your life. So, you know, I worked at 3 universities. Universities are, you know, college is not for everybody. So one of the focuses now are trades. You know, why can't you graduate school and become a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter? You know, we need those jobs. So I always look at the end result, that those requirements should lead you, prepare you for the next phase of your life. That's why it's called a commencement, right? You're commencing, leaving one, and you're moving on to something better. So I just think the graduation requirements should be what you want to do with your life.
Yeah, we should have a little flexibility in them, and also things like the Keystone exams that are a requirement. That we know these standardized tests are not really culturally responsive. They don't tend to measure what we think they're measuring. They were not designed to be punitive. They were designed to measure progress. And so using what some corporation somewhere is making a lot of money for those testing exams and holding you responsible for them is not a way that we should be putting a requirement on kids to graduate.
Perfect. Thank you so much. My last question is, it's kind of a weird one, but how do you think we can better enforce secure training for our paraeducators? Throughout my time as a student in South Fayette, okay, never mind. Really quickly, how can we enforce better training for our paraeducators?
What type of training are you talking about?
I know that a lot of paraeducators don't really, it's not that they don't know how to work with their students, but okay, well, we're out of time, unfortunately, for my section, so I'm going to transition over to Emma.
Well, it's okay. We can have another discussion.
Let's finish this question, definitely.
Sure.
Okay. The experience I have with paraeducators in the Pittsburgh Public School is our paraeducators are so I used to work for the Pittsburgh Teachers Union, and in our union, the paraeducators tended to be our members of color. They are lower paid, and they are just overall less supported because of the way that they are integrated into the education system. And so I've heard from them and from educators that they, while they're trying to teach you, they also want to learn. And I got complaints from my members when I was working for the union all the time about not having training from the school district that met them where they were. Like they're like, I am striving every day to give individualized education and responding to where my students are at. And the school district is not responding to where I'm at. I'm asking for, maybe it's de-escalation training, or maybe it's classroom management training, or maybe it's something on, being culturally responsive. They are asking for things that they're not getting from from their school districts. And so it might be worth like working and talking to the paraprofessionals in your building and seeing what they want and what they're looking for, and help them advocate to your school about what they want to see in training, because I bet you that they've had complaints about their training as well, because I've definitely heard that that our educators get the exact same, at least in Pittsburgh Public, I can't speak for every school district, but that they get the same training on their in-service days every year, and it's really not moving them forward. So I think there are ways that you can work with them.
Okay, thank you all so much. That really did help to clear a few things up. I'll definitely make sure to reach out to my officials and do what I can. I'll move it over to Mitch again. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Anya. Great questions being asked all around. So we'll go ahead and get it right into our last segment. We're going to be discussing the division in politics. So, M&A, floor is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Mitch. So I will start out with this question directed more towards Senator Williams, and that would be, how do politicians who are on opposite sides of the aisle interact with one another, especially after the storming of the Capitol?
It's really hard. There are a couple reasons why it's hard. So it's always been a challenge, but I think now COVID made it harder to begin with, because we've been working with remote session since March. So I've only been in Harrisburg twice since March on days that were really busy, and I thought that I had to be there. But there are a lot of my colleagues who don't like to wear masks on the Senate floor, and I don't feel safe, and I don't want to expose other people. But when you're not physically there, it's harder to reach across the aisle, because I don't even have most of their phone numbers, like a cell phone number, to call them and talk to them. But when you're in Harrisburg and they're on the other side, you can just walk over and say, hey, I didn't understand that, or hey, can we talk about that? So COVID has made it harder to begin with. And then I think we're all sort of trying to figure out how to respond to post January 6th and what does that look like? Because yes, it was very direct in DC, and I don't know if some of you might have seen some of AOC's tweets today that were very pointed about what she experienced and how it was very hard for her to work with Senator Ted Cruz. But even in Harrisburg, we have a senator who was at the insurrection. Not only was he at the insurrection, he spoke at a rally. He had been speaking for months, telling lies about the election and fraud. But not only was he there, and not only did he speak there, he organized buses and brought buses of people to the insurrection. And now we're in a position where the leadership has said that they don't see anything wrong. And I'm not sure where we go from there and how we get past that. I think it's going to be really challenging to do that, to confront white supremacy in a way that some of us haven't done before and haven't really done on the floor of the state Senate. And yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer than that.
Yeah, that's completely fine. I mean, I think we never really thought we would have to deal with something like this. But I mean, life's like a box of chocolates. You never really know what's going to happen, what you're going to get. So, yeah.
But it's scary, watching it on TV and then hearing things like, because I was getting increasingly, threatening, scary type emails. And then we were told, like, you probably shouldn't go to Harrisburg or your district office until after the inauguration. And I said, okay, that's great. I won't be there and I won't have my staff there, but like my address is still public information. And so what does that mean for my safety? And that's a scary thing that we live in right now.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's completely fine. I'm glad you finished. But yeah, it's rough. It definitely is. So my next question is more broad per se. I guess everyone can answer this. How do we restore the people's faith in presidential office?
If I can chime in, I just say tell the truth. Quite frankly, I think all of us, we have that little, I'm going to get religious here. I think when we took our first breath, we had this instruction manual downloaded into us, and we know the truth, right? When you do something bad, there's something in you that little tinge in you that And to me, folks know that the election wasn't stolen. They know truth from fiction, and it's what you choose to believe in. So I just think that we as a people need to have a reckoning, that we need to realize that, facts matter, that the truth matters, that diverse people matter, and just stop this BS, quite frankly. I think and I think always say an organization takes on the beliefs and the personality of its leader, right? So having Joe Biden in the office, and he's not this messiah that's going to save us all, right? But initially he comes in right now and he's setting a tone. It's not adversarial. He's factual. I watch the press briefings every day. They're not adversarial. He's not saying fake news. He's not contentious. So for me, that there's a core group of folks that want that. There's the reason why he's in the office. There's more people that want that than not, right? So I think that we just have to get back down to the basics of just being human beings, of the golden rules, tell the truth, don't lie, don't steal, have some virtues, those old outdated motives of ways of being, they need to come back, So I think there's a critical mass of folks that believe that. And I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic. I think the world is going to be better as a result of what we're going through. I always say positive lessons are not always taught in positive ways. This COVID virus, I think, reveals some cracks that we can fix. And we just, as a people, we just need to get our stuff together.
I kind of wanted to also jump in here. I fully agree with what Mr. Ferguson was saying. But recently, I was able to watch a documentary called The Social Dilemma. It's actually available on Netflix, and it really talks about what social media has been doing and how it actually toys with democracy, and how we've seen it. Social media can kind of put us on the far right and on the far left, and that's kind of where the major division it's happening, because all of the information that we're receiving is curated to our beliefs, and we're not really seeing what the other side is saying, and we're not really seeing any like middle ground or common ground. And I think just a resolution for myself personally is to kind of take a step back from all this, from social media. And I know it's hard because that's all we have right now to connect with people. But when you see something on Facebook or on Instagram, make sure you fact check it on your own. Make sure you compare it to other sources. See what the real news is out there. I think people just we have this amazing ability to use the internet to do all this amazing research. And I just, hope that all of you, I'm confident that you all know how to do research, and, you can form your own opinions, because it is hard to have your own opinion when you're young. I mean, growing up, I mean, my opinion has changed over time. I grew up in a Republican household, very conservative, very Christian, and I still hold near and dear a lot of those values, but it took me forming my own opinions, forming my own identity to really be comfortable with who I am today. And I think that, I just encourage all of you to do the same thing. And like, I think when we all form our own opinions and then put that into democracy and vote and use your voice. Of course, I don't think any of you are probably 18 yet and can vote, but when you can, I hope that you will. But yeah, just to reiterate the message of, things don't have to always be this divided. They don't have to be this divisive. Have conversations with people, go out of your comfort zone and meet new people. And that's truly how diversity, equity, and inclusion really comes together, is when everyone's at the table having a conversation.
That was nicely said, Mariah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I think that it is really important to form your own opinion on what your views are. So just wanted to add that little tidbit. But yeah, I can't agree with you all more. So good job.
Yeah, I don't have anything else to add. Sorry, my computer started dying. I had to plug it in.
Oh, it's fine. Thank you very much for that, guys. That was very nice. And now moving on to my last question, which is also more broad. In what way has the COVID-19 situation in government been impacted by the divisiveness? What decisions are and aren't being made because of the inability to compromise?
Oh, wow. I just say the whole debate about wearing a mask and not wearing a mask. For me, that has started initially. I'm a military guy. To me, the way I look at it, COVID was the enemy. And in the military, you don't decide, well, is this an enemy or not an enemy? No, it's an enemy, and you prepare to combat the enemy. And just having a conversation of whether, you wear a mask or not wear a mask, it was nonsensical to me. It made, and people were dying as a result of this. So, when you're in war, you don't have the option of sitting there having these debates of whether that's an enemy or not an enemy, or how to engage that enemy or not engage that enemy. So I just think that divisiveness was clearly evident just in the response to COVID initially, and then the downplaying of the numbers. There was no effort to really kind of say what is what. They wanted to downplay the numbers, and so yeah, I think, and for me it was really disheartening, because I think as a people, if we can't come together during a crisis like this, when can we come together?
Yeah, I think initially there was a lot of bipartisanship really early on, in terms of in the state of Pennsylvania, doing some things to adjust for school and pushing out some regulations and some money really quickly. And then it became partisan, and then it became wearing a mask became partisan rather than based on science. And we've had, senators and representatives get COVID, still not wear masks. We've had a representative die, and people are still not wearing masks because, I don't know, it shows some sort of weakness or something, but they are exposing colleagues and they're exposing staff who doesn't have a choice. It is a workplace safety issue. But also the amount of, the money that came into Pennsylvania that we had to spend, that the legislature had to debate about how spending, and the partisanship, yeah, we eventually spent that money, but it took months to get it to people that needed it. And people's businesses closed, people died, people lost their homes in the interim of us having a partisan fight over how that money should be spent and where it should go and how it should be allocated. And it's criminal that that's where we're at. And like I said, not being in person as much hasn't made it any easier.
Yeah, I'd like to say this too. Senator Casey has talked a lot about the role of the federal government during the COVID response. And I want to share some of the things that he has said to us. It's the federal government that can spend money beyond a budget. The state government cannot. Local governments cannot. Only the federal government can. And so, we saw a big tussle in COVID response through the year, and we saw a very bleak period where there was no tussling that was going on whatsoever, while people were, to the senator's point, were really suffering in an excruciating way. So my best suggestion to you now is let's watch and see what's going to happen now. They're having a very serious argument about the rules of engagement on the floor of the United States Senate. And our boss was interviewed yesterday, I think, by the Philadelphia Inquirer. And the majority's position right now is the people have spoken. The people have spoken to what they need. And if the rules need to be changed, which a lot of people are extremely fearful of, but if the rules need to be changed so that the people's will can be accomplished, then we're going to see how that plays out on the floor of the United States Senate, because we have, number one, we have not. Thank heavens for the vaccination, but that the president just had to order 200 million more doses. We are months away from getting those into arms. We have no real assessment yet of the economic impact of this. We have years ahead of us to address what's about to happen. So you guys are living. You're merging into this age of, your age to vote, your age to make these decisions, your adulthood, when these very important things are taking place. Be so attentive to what takes place now, because we are seeing things happen that we don't know if these are new. These are things that have not happened before. Our government institutions are being tested in ways that we don't know that they have been tested, so let's watch and see what happens, as the will of the people hopefully is what moves forward now.
And to add to that, you also be the will of the people. When you can vote, vote.
Amen. We're not going to listen to you, but.
All right, everyone, thank you very much for that. I think that is the end of my session. So I will now pass it over to Mitch.
Thank you, Emma, and thank you, panelists. It's been incredible just being able to receive all this knowledge and wisdom from you. We actually have an announcement from Dr. Herring, our fearless leader, about some upcoming opportunities for the Shout family.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Howard. And I just want to say to all of you on the call, the panelists, you guys were amazing. And you just dropped so many gems and nuggets in our laps that, it's worth a lot of money to us, a lot of value. And so what we do here in Shout is when we hear something of value, we give you what we call the money clap. So if you saw some of the students giving you guys money claps, that's because you just gave us something that we can actually use. So definitely everyone, please give all of our panelists the money clap, because we appreciate everything that you've done for us. So definitely thank you, thank you, thank you. Really quickly though, a couple of things. Number one, the students have written a book. I don't know if you guys saw that. I'm going to ask my good friend Adi to drop the link to pre-order the book. We will send you the actual order form. It's $20, but it has the narratives of Handprints Heal Footprints. It talks about how to start your own Shout chapter. It has why the students join Shout. It's an amazing book, 164 pages of phenomenalness. I know that's not a real word, but it's a word today. And so we're definitely going to use that. But definitely, if you guys are interested, or you know anyone else to support Shout, because we want to be a self-sustaining organization. So please, that's the way we're going to be able to do it, by, you know, selling our books and our upcoming merchandise. Finally, I know I already posted in the chat about Women's Her Story Month, but we have a link, and I put it in the chat right.
Put yourself
You can't even hear me? Wait a second. I put it in a link right now for our.
Back on mute.
Okay, here it is. Am I back? Awesome. I posted in the link right now just for you guys to be able to register for our event, our Black History Month event. We actually are having what's called a Divine Nine event, and that is the history of Black Greek letter organizations. And so when we talk about Black history, it's really just history. You know, every time you have something that's going on in the United States or even in the world, there were people of color who were there that were doing a lot, maybe probably the lion's share of the work. And so we want you guys to come and please register for that event. It's going to be an amazing event, February 18th. So you guys are definitely invited to that. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Howard so he can close the show.
Yep, like Dr. Herring said, we've got a lot going on. Incredible book to be bought, read. It's an incredible piece. I, for one, have never written a book. And I mean, I feel like any high school student that has, just huge money clap for you. But yeah, it's about 9 o'clock. So of course, have to say a huge money clap to our facilitators, our 5 Shout students. So let's give them all a money clap. Way to go, Alex, Zach, Emma, Anya, and where's she, Batisha? Way to go. So much fun having the opportunity to work with all of you. And then thank you so much to our panelists being able to discuss these kind of uncomfortable topics and really being able to educate these students. And so we're here becoming better citizens, better leaders, better advocates. And so overall, thank you all so much for being a part of this event. And then to you attendees as well, thank you for coming. We hope that this was as educational and enjoyable for you as it was for us. And if that's all that there is, I think we are good to go. Anybody have any final thoughts?
I would just like to say thank you all to the panelists and everyone for showing up. I definitely learned a lot tonight, and politics is something I wish to pursue in my lifetime. And it definitely gave me a wonderful insight from people that know a lot more than me. And I guarantee a lot of the things that were said are going to stick with me for a long time. So thank you.
I just wanted to make a quick note that I did put my email in the chat. So if any of you want to reach out or want to learn, more about the Women's Commission, or if you're looking, just for like a mentor or anything and you want to connect, I put my email in the chat. So feel free to reach out. And thank you for having this conversation.
Well, I just want to briefly say thank you. When you're talking about social media and the regular media, when you're inundated with all this negative divisiveness, hard stuff, it's tough. It wears on your soul. And when I have engagements like that with such professional, thoughtful young people, you give me hope for the future. So I know I'm looking at future senators, future presidents, corporate CEOs, civic leaders. So so when I'm sitting there in my chair in my old age and I look and I see, President Howard, so, thank you. Get involved, people. And thank you for what you do to help make this world better. And again, I'll sleep good tonight. You guys give me hope. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. This is the best kind of best leadership club ever. Congratulations to you guys.
Thank you all. If that's everything, everybody that's in the audience, you are released. For our panelists, not panelists, sorry, panelists, you are released as well. Facilitators, if you could stay on for 5 minutes, we're going to do a quick debrief and I will get you all out of here.
I just want to, there's like two favorite groups that I love to work with. Is the youth and senior citizens. So I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but this is great. And it really, you are our future leaders. So thank you so much for really doing this. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Good night, guys. Great job.